First things first, happy Halloween, everybody! And I know I'm filming this on October 2nd, but to me Halloween is not a date at the end of October, it is a state of mind. And one that I have all year long, but for most of the time I'm trying to repress it so I don't look too weird. At least give me a month, let me be in an Halloween state of mind 1 month a year, let my macabre side run free. To me Halloween is the culmination of the Halloween period. So, with all this in mind, Creepy Falls. Creepy Falls is a game that seems to be perfect for the season that we are now entering. Creepy Falls is a game of monster placement. Well, it's worker placement, but each player controls a clan of different monsters, and you place your monsters on the board to, in the traditional style of game, reserve different actions, collect different bonuses, etc., 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 and of course, there's also competition for that. It's not like everybody can select the same action and get the same thing. It is a game in which players that will have the biggest presence in various areas will get to collect a larger bonus, more resources that they can use to score points at the end of the game. Now, Creepy Falls is only available in Italian as of now. And the rulebook is in Italian. There's nothing to do about that. Maybe they'll release an English version, at least as a PDF that you can download online. The game itself doesn't have many language-based components. There are only some player aids and a part that has to do with spells. And in my group, not everybody speaks Italian. Some do. I'm not the only native speaker of Italian, but we also have non-speakers of Italian, so what I did, I made a player aid. First, just to translate the linguistic elements that are needed to play the game. And second, to have a player aid, because there isn't one in the game, and the turn structure is not the most linear that there is, so I still wanted to make a player aid anyway. So I made both a player aid and a translation of the key linguistic elements of the game in English. I'm gonna upload it on Board Game Geek on the page of the game. So if you're curious, if there is someone that can read the manual for you and then you simply use my player aid, you should be able to play the game. Heck, maybe even after I cover the general ideas about gameplay in the main segment of my video, then you may be able to play it with the player aid. The bigger question, of course, is, should you play it? Would you enjoy playing it? Well, let me show you how the game works and then I'll tell you what I think about the game. This is the board of the game, but before we start interacting with the board, each turn we have to do something else, which is to assign forms. These tiles represent different forms that the players can take. Starting with the first players, you hand this stack of tiles to the first player chooses one, keeps it, gives the tiles to the next player that will select one, and so on and so forth until each player has one. These forms will give you different advantages. For example, you may have extra rewards when you collect resources, you may be able to do extra stuff, advantages when you are deploying your units. A very popular form is the Raft Pack. Everybody loves this one. This one gives you 3 rat tokens that you place in 3 locations on the board, the beginning of the turn, and in those locations you will be able to break ties, which is a very powerful thing. And then we'll see, well, what that means. The board is divided in locations, each of these is a location. Each location indicates the rewards that players will gain by having majority in that location, and also you see a set of lines there that indicates how the order in which you place your game pieces. After forms have been assigned, players will alternate placing their game pieces on the board, and placement is a huge element. It's pretty much the main phase of each turn. And it's important when you place your game pieces that you place them in order. That is, the first player will place on the top line, and then the one underneath, and then the one underneath, because the biggest presence in a location will give you the best rewards, but if there is a tie, then the player that placed first within that tie tier will get the better resource. As for the game pieces and their placement rules, these meeples are ghouls, and they're pretty much your basic your basic unit. There aren't really any specific rules about how to place them, but still, the general rule applies that during your turn you choose a group of game pieces and you place them in one location. You can't scatter them around in a single turn. For example, this is my play for this turn, and then next turn I can place something else, somewhere else. Usually you cannot add to an area we already placed, so I cannot add goals there. However, there are a couple of things that will allow you to break rules. Mummies. Mummies are special game pieces and they come out of the ground. So actually, yes, you can add them to a previous group. Frankensteins. Frankensteins give you the power when you place them on the board. When you place them on the board, later you can turn them like this to indicate that you use their special power, and you can add game pieces there. Next we have the werewolves and the witches. Werewolves and witches are similar in that they're extremely misanthropic, or should I say mismonstropic. They don't like to be with other people. When you place a werewolf in a location, it has to be the only game piece that you place there. And the same with the witch. They just don't go together with other game pieces. So those are for your main pieces. So players will alternate, again, putting game pieces in various locations. And you continue like this until all game pieces available have been assigned. Players start with only some game pieces available, and then they need to spend resources to recruit more game pieces in their, let's call it their active army. After you're done with placement, it is time to do resolution. So you start with the first location indicated with the number 1 there, and you check all locations in order. The player that will get the best reward, which is the one on top, is the player that has the most weight. When you count, well, there's only one player there, the player has the most weight. Unless they're using the witch that has a weight of 0. Basically, ghouls and mummies have a weight of 1. Werewolves and Frankensteins have a weight of 2. The witch has a weight of 0, and you need to have some weight. A witch by herself cannot do anything. So you count how much weight is there. In that case, for example, we have a werewolf with a weight of 2. The ghoul has a weight of 1. So this player goes first and this player goes next. And basically the player with the most weight gets the resource on top, and the other player gets the next resource, and so on and so forth. That location, for example, gives us body parts, and the player with the most weight gets 3 body parts, and the next player will get 2 body parts. The next player, there is one body part. Following location in the forest, you get amulets, same idea or similar, because the first player gets 2, and then 1 and 1. Then we have blood and soul. These are extremely important resources because actually they are what you need to win the game. When the game is over at the end of the 6th round, each soul token that you collect is worth 2 points, each blood token 1 point, unless you use a game effects that lets you score blood as 2 and soul as 1. The other thing is the default. So that's how you collect victory points. There is an area on the board where the Van Helsing die is, as the shape of a die but not the functionality of a die. Use it as a turn tracker. At the end of each turn, you simply turn the face to indicate the turn that you're playing. At the end of turn 6, the game is over and you score points coming from blood and soul. And since Van Helsing, this pesky monster hunter that nobody likes, will scare monsters away, Van Helsing will always be in a location, and that location cannot be scored. Also, this is the pumpkin patch, and in any case, it does not have any resource. So when Van Helsing starts moving, there is a game effect that lets you move Van Helsing. You'll pretty much have 2 locations on the board that are useless. One, the one in which you cannot go, and one that doesn't have any reward. The library will give you books, or let's say grimoires, so it's much fancier that way. Then we have in this area, oopsie, in this area here and in that area there, you will place random tokens at the beginning of each turn, and simply the first player will get to take 3 of those tokens, second player 2, third player 1. Here, this location gives you again blood and soul, and then the location again gives you tokens. This location lets you perform special actions. The first player will get to choose any of those actions. The second player has to choose another action, so as you take an action, you pretty much occupy it. And those actions will allow you, for example, to destroy a gold for 2 tokens, or turn a gold into a mummy, that kind of thing. After placement and resolution, it's market time. That is when players will use the tokens that they have acquired earlier to buy new units or get several types of advantages. You can spend 3 body parts to get a gold, you can spend 7 body parts for a Frankenstein, 6 amulets for a werewolf, 7 for a witch. This is also the phase where you may buy spells. Here at the bottom of the board, there's an area with the spells. The spells are divided in 3 tiers, level 1, level 2, and level 3. To indicate that you bought a certain spell, you place this Lilliputian marker of your color on the spell that you bought. And now there is an advantage you will use for the rest of the game. Here, for example, if you get the first or second reward in the space 1 on the board, you receive an extra body part. This one costs 5 books. Books are the currency used to buy spells. With 5 books, now further spells cost 1 less book. In order to buy a level 2 spell, you need to have bought at least a level 1. And in order to buy a level 3, you need to have at least a level 2. There are some really good ones. For example, this one, you double your profit when you sell stuff at the market, because yes, after or instead of buying new units or buying spells, you can also sell tokens at the market. You can sell 1 type of token per turn. You can sell between 1 and 5 tokens on that turn, and you score an equal number of blood tokens. So I sell 3 body parts, I get 3 body parts, I get 3 blood. I sell 5 books, I get 5 blood, unless, again, I'm doubling my income there. Other things, I don't know. Now the werewolves are heavier, they have more weight, and the witches have a weight of 1. There's really some interesting stuff. You can use werewolves and witches together with other game pieces. We usually would not be able to. After the market, everybody has to pay a tribute to, I guess, the Dark Lord of Creepy Falls. You had to spend 2 blood tokens. You return them to the bank. If you can't, you destroy units instead. And this is how it works. I know it's pretty elaborate, but this is pretty much how the turn works in summary. Get a new form for the turn, place your units on the board, check every area to score resources and collect resources based on how much presence you have there. Go to the market to buy spells and other stuff, and to sell tokens for blood. Pay your tribute, and continue like this until the end of the 6th turn, and at the point the player with the most points is the winner of the game. This is a game that my group and I unfortunately did not enjoy all that much. There wasn't anything that was glaringly wrong that just jumped at us as like broken. It just totally destroys the game. It's not that there was a big flaw. I would say it's the other way around. It was the lack of something remarkable in the game. Everything was pretty much by the book. It felt a slightly dated worker placement game with ideas that we have seen in many other games that are implemented not in a bad way, but again, not in a way that stands out in any specific way. Everything felt like, I don't know, like a good beer that you drink the morning after and it feels spent. Like a good wine that has been diluted with water. Just doesn't have the full flavor that you would expect from the ingredients. It is just a game that has some parts that move well, they move beautifully within the design, but they do not amount to more than the sum of the parts. I put my monster there, and you put it there, and I may use a special power, and you do this, and you do that. Somehow, we were doing all these things that have the potential to be very good. In many games, they are good. And no one in my group made a connection. No one was excited about their next move. Everything felt just so by the book. So, I don't know, like there were no risks that were taken in the design. A problem, actually, if I have to point out one problem, it could be downtime, especially connected with decisions that ultimately don't necessarily feel all that relevant. Meaning, it's not one of those games in which you can tell players, well, you know, think about your move ahead, so when the game goes to you, you can perform your move and the game keeps moving. Because it's all about relative majority, and so I may decide more or less what I want to do, but you're gonna place a werewolf there, or you're gonna place another thing there, and right before me now the weight in the location that I'm interested in changes. Also, there is a fact, I don't know that I mentioned in my main segment, the witches and werewolves at the end, when you're resolving a location, players that have monsters there, they have to pay a tribute to the player. So again, now I'm considering, because of what you just did, the player right before me, do I want to get in that location? Do I want to send a mummy to upset the balance and try to risk that? Do I want to add to a place where you added the werewolf? I wanted to go there, but now I have to give you a tribute. That kind of annoys me. So simply because the situation is so relative, you really can't plan ahead. And so when the game comes to you, you're going to start almost from scratch, devising your strategy, or still adjusting your strategy to what you had in mind before. 4 players are doing that. The game is just slow. And maybe that also, again, prevents the game from feeling like it's more than the sum of the parts, prevents the game from taking off, Another thing, however, you have this downtime, you have a lot of thinking, and you want to get 5 weights instead of 4, or use that effect. And then what happens is you're getting 1 amulet instead of 2. Now, to do anything, you need at least 6 amulets. So it just feels like that was a lot of work for not so much. Maybe you'll get 2 body parts instead of 1, and that's a little more interesting because with 3 you get a goal. But then there are just so many things that will destroy your goals, and it just feels like it's a lot of work, and all these monsters, and you expect that the game will be about these armies of different monsters, but it takes you almost half of the game to get a werewolf or a witch. And so really, it gets, you have to wait until almost the end of the game before there really is an interesting pool of different monsters there. The game just feels slow. It feels like you're doing all these actions that feel very by the book to get small rewards that over a long period of time, like half of the game, they turn into something interesting. And then you make a wrong move, and maybe you don't use your witch well, you don't use your werewolf well. Then you're like, well, it took me 45 minutes to get that wolf, and it's not even all that powerful. So Creepy Falls, it has nice looking components when it comes at least to the wooden miniatures. Those little microscopic cylinders for the spells, those are annoying. I didn't like those from the point of view of production at all. Why? Because they roll a lot. They roll on the table, and you start hearing the noise like pling, pling, pling. And then your game is interrupted as people are looking around for the microscopic cylinder. A cube would have done it. A cube would have had the same functionality of marking the spell that you acquired, and it doesn't roll as much. So production is nice, but it has a couple of little annoying things. But the problem again is gameplay is not horribly wrong, it's not broken, it is just unfortunately uninteresting. And that's a pity, because Creepy Falls could have been the perfect game for the season of Halloween, but as far as I can tell, and as far as my group can tell too, this is not it. This is not the great Halloween game that we were hoping for.